The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that displayed the stars in real time, showing the 312 systems that made up the Alliance. Representatives from across the Orion Arm filled the floating platforms, each species different from the last. Some breathed methane. Others existed as clouds of intelligent gas. A few were so ancient that they had forgotten what their original forms looked like. High Arbiter Vexton stood at the central podium, his tall gray body wrapped in ceremonial robes that marked his position. The Kalori were among the oldest species in the Council, their civilization stretching back nearly 50,000 years. Vexton himself had served as High Arbiter for 2 centuries, guiding the Alliance through conflicts and crises with patience and wisdom. Today, he faced a room full of new delegates. Every cycle brought fresh faces to the Council, young ambassadors eager to make their mark on galactic politics. Most of them had never heard the warning. It was his duty to make sure they understood. "Thank you all for attending this closed session," Vexton said, his voice carrying through the translation systems that allowed every species to understand every other. "What I am about to share with you is classified at the highest level. It does not leave this room. It is not discussed with your governments. It is not recorded in any public archive." The delegates shifted in their seats. Classified briefings were rare. The Council believed in transparency, in open debate, and shared knowledge. For something to be hidden meant it was either dangerous or embarrassing. Usually both. Vexton touched a control on his podium, and the star display above them changed. It zoomed in on a small yellow star in the outer spiral arm, far from the center of galactic civilization. A single planet glowed blue and green, covered in water and life. "This world is called Earth by its inhabitants," Vexton said. "The dominant species calls themselves humans. They have existed for approximately 300,000 years, though their civilization is much younger. They developed spaceflight only recently. They have not yet traveled beyond their own moon." A ripple of confusion passed through the delegates. Why would the Council care about such a primitive species? There were thousands of pre-spaceflight civilizations scattered across the galaxy. None of them warranted special attention. 12,000 years ago, when this Council was founded, the precursors left behind a single archive, Vexton continued. The precursors, as you know, were the most advanced civilization ever to exist. They conquered galaxies. They bent the laws of physics to their will. They created wonders that we still cannot understand. And then they vanished, leaving only this Council and their collected wisdom. The delegates knew the stories. Every child in every civilization grew up hearing about the precursors. They were legends, almost gods. In all of their archives, and all of their warnings and teachings and records, the precursors left only one restriction. One species they told us never to approach. One world they marked as forbiddens. Vexton paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Earth. Humanity. The precursors who feared nothing in the universe were afraid of humans. Ambassador Crixol of the Drazen Imperium leaned forward in his seat. He was large, even by Drazen standards, his scaled body covered in ceremonial armor that displayed his military rank. The Drazen were warriors, conquerors who had carved out their own empire before joining the Council. They respected strength and despised weakness. "With respect, High Arbiter," Crixol said, his deep voice rumbling through the hall. "This seems like superstition. The precursors vanished 3,000 years ago. How could they know anything about a species that had not even developed writing at that time?" "The precursors saw further than we can imagine," Vexton replied. "They ran simulations. They calculated probabilities across millions of years. They understood patterns that we are still struggling to comprehend. If they said humans were dangerous, they had a reason. What reason? Crixel pressed. What makes these humans so special? From what our observers have recorded, they spend most of their time fighting each other. They pollute their own world. They cannot even agree on basic facts about their own history. They are primitive and divided and weak. Vexton smiled, though there was no warmth in it. You have described exactly why they are dangerous, Ambassador. Humans fight constantly. They have never known true peace. Every generation has experienced war. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization, and they have come close to using them more than once. They treat conflict as natural, as inevitable. They prepare for it from birth. That makes them self-destructive, not threatening, Crixel said. Does it? Vexton asked. Consider what it means, Ambassador. A species that has survived despite constant internal warfare. A species that has developed technology not for exploration or knowledge, but primarily for killing each other more efficiently. A species that adapts to conflict the way others adapt to climate or food scarcity. When humans face an external threat, they do not collapse. They unite. And a united humanity, with all their aggression and creativity and stubbornness focused on a single enemy, is something the precursors calculated no force in the galaxy could withstand. The hall fell silent. Crixel sat back in his seat, but his expression showed doubt rather than acceptance. The warning stands, Vexton said firmly. No species is to make hostile contact with humanity. No weapons are to be deployed in their system. No attempts at conquest or subjugation. We leave them alone, and we hope that by the time they develop faster than light travel, they will have matured enough to join the galactic community peacefully. After the session ended, Crixel walked through the corridors of the council station with his aide, a younger Drazen named Vornax. The ambassador's mind was churning with thoughts he could not shake. The precursors were powerful, Crixel said, but they are gone. Perhaps they were wrong. Perhaps they made mistakes. Our empire has never lost a war, Vornax. We have crushed species far more advanced than these humans. The High Arbiter seemed certain, Ambassador, Vornax said carefully. The High Arbiter is old and cautious. The council has grown soft in its long peace. Crixel stopped walking and stared out a viewport at the stars. When I return home, I will speak with the Emperor. The Drazen Imperium did not become great by following the warnings of dead civilizations. Perhaps it is time to show the galaxy that the old rules no longer apply. Vornax said nothing. He knew better than to argue with his superior. But as they continued walking, he could not help glancing back at the viewport, at the tiny yellow star that was too far away to see. He wondered if the precursors had known something the Drazen did not. Emperor Drazker sat upon the throne of conquest, a massive seat carved from the bones of enemies his ancestors had defeated centuries ago. The throne room of the imperial palace stretched before him, lined with trophies from 100 wars. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one marking a civilization the Drazen had crushed beneath their boots. Ambassador Crixel knelt before his emperor, head bowed in respect. He had returned from the Galactic Council with a proposal that had been burning in his mind for months. Now, finally, he had the chance to present it. "Rise, Ambassador," Drazker commanded. His voice was deep and cold, the voice of a ruler who had never known mercy. "You requested this audience. Speak." Crixel stood and met his emperor's eyes. "My lord, I bring word of an opportunity. A world ripe for conquest, rich in resources, populated by a species too primitive to resist us. The Galactic Council has forbidden contact with this world, but I believe their caution is misplaced." Drazker leaned forward slightly. He was always interested in conquest. "Tell me more." "The world is called Earth. The species calls itself human. They've only recently developed basic spaceflight. Their weapons are crude. Their ships cannot even leave their own solar system. Crixel pulled up a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. A single battle group could subjugate the entire planet in hours. We would gain a new colony, new resources, and new subjects to serve the Imperium. And the Council's objection? Superstition, my lord. Ancient warnings from the Precursors, a dead race that vanished thousands of years ago. The Council claims humans are dangerous, but our observers have watched them for decades. They fight among themselves constantly. They cannot unite even to save their own environment. They are weak, divided, and ripe for conquest. Drazker considered this for a long moment. The Drazen Imperium had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, and already Drazker chafed under its restrictions. The Council preached peace and cooperation, but the Drazen had built their empire through war. Peace made them restless. Their warriors grew soft without enemies to fight. Summon General Thaxorn, the Emperor commanded. Within the hour, the general stood before the throne. Thaxorn was the finest military commander in the Imperium, a veteran of 30 campaigns who had never tasted defeat. His scarred face and missing eye told the story of a life spent in battle. "General," Drazker said, "Ambassador Crixel has brought us a proposal. I want your assessment." Thaxorn studied the holographic display of Earth for several minutes, his tactical mind analyzing every detail. He noted the positions of human satellites, the locations of their military bases, the primitive state of their space program. "It would be simple, my lord," Thaxorn said finally. "Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Their spacecraft are powered by chemical reactions. Their weapons fire metal projectiles. They have no shields, no plasma cannons, no faster-than-light capability. I could take the planet with 5 ships. With 18, it would be a massacre." "And the Council's warning?" Drazker asked. Thaxorn shrugged his massive shoulders. "I have fought enemies the Council considered dangerous, my lord. The Vexthari were supposed to be unconquerable. We conquered them in 3 years. The Morati were supposed to have weapons that could destroy stars. We turned their weapons against them. Warnings and legends mean nothing against superior firepower." Drazker smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then we proceed. Prepare the Third Fleet for deployment. I want Earth under our control within 1 standard month." 2 weeks later, High Arbiter Vexthan arrived at the Drazen homeworld aboard a diplomatic vessel. He had heard rumors of the Imperium's plans and had come to deliver one final warning in person. The Emperor received him in the throne room, surrounded by his generals and advisors. Vexthan stood alone before them, his tall gray form seeming fragile compared to the armored Drazen warriors. "Emperor Drazkar," Vexthan said, his voice calm despite the tension in the room. "I have come to ask you to reconsider your planned action against Earth. The Galactic Council has no authority over internal Drazen affairs," Drazker replied coldly. "Our expansion plans are not subject to their approval. This is not about authority, Emperor. This is about survival." Vexthan stepped closer to the throne, ignoring the guards who moved to stop him. "I have served the Council for 200 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves through arrogance and overconfidence. I am asking you, as someone who has no desire to see the Drazen Imperium added to that list, to listen to me. Speak then." The Precursors were not superstitious fools. They were the most intelligent beings ever to exist. When they said humanity was dangerous, they meant it. I do not fully understand why. Perhaps no one does except the Precursors themselves. But I believe them. And I am telling you now that if you attack Earth, you will regret it." Drazker laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the throne room. "You speak of regret to the ruler of an empire that has never been defeated? You warn me of danger from a species that still burns dead plants for fuel? High Arbiter, I respect your position and your years of service. But you have grown old and fearful, The Drazen are neither. Vex then stood in silence for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I have delivered my warning. The Council will not intervene when your fleet attacks Earth. Not because we lack the power, but because intervention would be pointless. The humans will handle the situation themselves. More laughter from the Drazen, this time from the generals and advisors as well. Handle a Drazen battle fleet? With chemical rockets and metal bullets? The very idea was absurd. You may leave now, High Arbiter, Drasker said, still chuckling. Return to your council and tell them that the Drazen Imperium bows to no warnings and fears no enemy. Within 1 month, Earth will be ours. Vax then turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. Remember this moment, Emperor, he said quietly. Remember that you were warned. Then he was gone. 3 days later, the Third Fleet departed from the Drazen homeworld. 80 warships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and carrying thousands of soldiers. General Thaxorn commanded from the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror's Wrath. As the fleet entered hyperspace, he allowed himself a moment of anticipation. Earth would fall. The humans would submit. And the Drazen Imperium would prove once and for all that the old warnings meant nothing. He was so certain of victory that he had not even bothered to prepare a backup plan. The Drazen fleet emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter, their massive ships casting shadows across the gas giant's swirling clouds. General Thaxorn stood on the bridge of the Conqueror's Wrath, watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his view screen. Such a small world, he thought. Such a tiny speck of life in the vastness of space. Conquering it would barely count as a victory. Begin the broadcast, he ordered. The communications officer activated the transmission array, sending a message toward Earth on every frequency humans were known to use. The message had been translated into all major human languages. It was simple and direct, as befitting the Drazen way. People of Earth, this is General Thaxorn of the Drazen Imperium. Your world now belongs to us. You have 12 hours to surrender unconditionally. All governments must transfer authority to Drazen administrators. All military forces must lay down their weapons. Resistance will be met with orbital bombardment. Your cities will burn. Your civilization will end. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. Then the fleet continued its slow approach toward Earth, giving the humans time to understand their situation and accept the inevitable. On Earth, the message arrived like a thunderbolt from a clear sky dot in Houston. Flight Director Sam Collins was monitoring routine satellite operations when his screens lit up with alarms. Unknown objects approaching Earth. Massive energy signatures. Radio transmissions in every language simultaneously. He stared at his monitors for a full 30 seconds before his training kicked in and he began making calls. In Washington, Secretary of Defense Laura Bennett was pulled out of a budget meeting to receive the news. She listened to the transmission 3 times, her face growing paler with each repetition. Then she picked up the phone and called the president. Within an hour, the world knew. News broadcasts showed the alien ships approaching, their images captured by every telescope on Earth. Social media exploded with panic, denial, prayers, and arguments. Some people fled to the countryside. Others gathered in churches and temples. Governments convened emergency sessions. Military forces mobilized. But everyone knew the same terrible truth. There was nothing they could do. Sam Collins worked through the chaos, coordinating with observatories and space agencies around the world. He tracked the alien fleet's approach, calculated their trajectory, and fed information to anyone who could use it. When a colleague asked him why he bothered, he simply said, "Because someone has to." Laura Bennett spent the first 3 hours managing the initial response. She ordered evacuations of major cities, mobilized the military, and coordinated with allied nations. But even as she gave orders, she knew they were meaningless. Their best weapons could not reach orbit. Their fastest jets could not intercept ships that traveled between stars. Then something strange began to happen. 5 hours into the crisis, the panic started to fade. Not because people stopped being afraid, but because fear transformed into something else. Something harder. Something more dangerous. In Moscow, Russian generals opened secure communications with their American counterparts for the first time in decades. Old rivalries suddenly seemed meaningless when faced with extinction. In Beijing, Chinese engineers shared classified research with European scientists, working together on problems that might have taken years to solve alone. In New Delhi, programmers began writing code to hack the alien communications, trading ideas with hackers in Tel Aviv and Tokyo who were working on the same problem. Humanity stopped fighting itself and started fighting back. Colonel Jake Morrison was a test pilot stationed at Edwards Air Force Base, a man who had spent his entire career pushing aircraft beyond their limits. When the call came asking for volunteers to fly a modified shuttle toward the alien fleet, he answered immediately. "It is probably a suicide mission," his commanding officer warned. "Everything is a suicide mission now," Jake replied. "At least this one matters." His co-pilot was Captain Amy Lawson, an aerospace engineer who had designed half the modifications on the shuttle herself. She was calm and precise where Jake was bold and instinctive. They made a perfect team. The shuttle launched 9 hours after the alien transmission, carrying experimental sensors, communications equipment, and a single nuclear warhead. The plan was simple: get close to the alien fleet, attempt communication, and gather as much information as possible. If diplomacy failed, the nuke was a last resort. Jake flew the shuttle like nothing Amy had ever seen. He pushed the engines beyond their rated limits, used gravitational slingshots around the moon to gain speed, and navigated by instinct when the computers could not keep up. Within 3 hours, they were approaching the alien fleet. General Thaxorn noticed the small, human vessel on his sensors and felt a moment of annoyance. The humans were approaching? In that tiny craft? It was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. "Destroy it," he ordered casually. "Show them what happens to those who resist." The plasma cannon fired, a bolt of superheated energy that should have vaporized the shuttle instantly. But Jake was already moving. He had been watching the alien ships, studying their weapon placements. And when he saw the cannon begin to glow, he threw the shuttle into a spin that carried them just past the plasma bolt's edge. "How did you do that?" Amy gasped. "I do not know," Jake admitted. "Just felt right." 2 more shots followed. Jake dodged both, using maneuvers that the shuttle was never designed to perform, pushing the craft so hard that warning lights filled the cockpit. Then they slipped into the shadow of a Drazen cruiser, hidden from the main weapons. On the bridge of the Conqueror's Wrath, Thaxorn frowned. The human pilot was skilled. More skilled than he had expected. But no matter. One shuttle could not threaten a fleet. Then his sensors began showing more launches from Earth. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Amy activated the communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "Attention, Drazen Fleet. This is Captain Amy Lawson of Earth. You have made a mistake coming here. You see our primitive technology and think we are weak. You see us fighting among ourselves and think we are divided. But you do not understand what you are looking at." She paused, watching the swarm of human vessels rising from Earth on her sensors. Shuttles, rockets, modified aircraft, anything that could fly. "This is what humans do," she continued. "We do not surrender. We do not stop. You can kill millions of us, and the survivors will keep fighting. You can destroy our cities, and we will fight from the ruins. You can burn our entire world, and the last human alive will still be looking for a way to hurt you. We have been at war since before we could write. Every generation has known battle. Every child grows up learning that sometimes you have to fight even when you cannot win. She took a breath and spoke the words that would echo across history. You are not our first enemy. You are simply the next one. General Thaxorn listened to the transmission and felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. The battle for Earth began with chaos and ended with revelation. General Thaxorn had conquered 30 worlds. He had fought enemies with superior numbers, superior technology, and superior positions. He had never lost because he understood war. War was mathematics. War was logistics. War was calculating the strength of your enemy and applying overwhelming force until they submitted. The humans did not understand these rules. Or perhaps they simply refused to follow them. The first wave of human attacks came from everywhere at once. Commercial satellites that had been quietly repositioned over the past 6 hours suddenly fired their maneuvering thrusters and hurled themselves at Drazen sensor arrays. The satellites were not weapons. They were chunks of metal moving at orbital velocities. But metal moving fast enough can damage anything. 3 sensor clusters went dark on the Conqueror's wrath. Thaxorn ordered his fleet to spread out, to create distance between ships. As they moved, more projectiles came. Debris from old space stations, defunct satellites, even bags of garbage that astronauts had thrown away decades ago. The humans had tracked it all, calculated trajectories, and turned space junk into weapons. "This is insane," the weapons officer muttered. "They are throwing trash at us. They are throwing everything at us," Thaxorn replied grimly. "And they are not stopping." The shuttle carrying Jake Morrison and Amy Lawson had attached itself to the underside of a Drazen cruiser, hiding in a blind spot that their pilots had discovered during the approach. Now Amy worked on the ship's hull with cutting tools while Jake kept watch. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "Their ships use plasma conduits for power distribution," Amy said, not looking up from her work. "Cut the right conduit, and you disable the weapons on this entire section." Standard engineering. Every ship has weak points. How do you know that? I have been reading their energy signatures for the past hour. Physics is physics, no matter what planet you are from. She cut through the hull and reached inside, her gloved hands finding the glowing conduit she had predicted. One quick motion with her cutting tool, and the plasma flow stopped. Across the cruiser's hull, a dozen weapon emplacements went dark. In Houston, Sam Collins coordinated the most complex operation in human history. Thousands of aircraft were in the air. Submarines had surfaced and were launching missiles. Ground-based lasers designed for satellite communication had been repurposed as weapons. Their beams too weak to damage the alien ships, but bright enough to blind their sensors. "Redirect the Atlantic Squadron to coordinate 7-7-Mark II, Sam ordered. "They have a gap in their formation on the starboard side." "Sir, those pilots will not survive the approach," his assistant said. "They know that." "Send the order." The pilots knew. Every human fighting that day knew. The alien ships had shields that could stop nuclear weapons. They had armor that could withstand direct hits from anything in Earth's arsenal. No single attack would destroy them. But the humans were not trying to destroy them. They were trying to exhaust them, to overwhelm them, to make every second of the invasion cost more than it was worth. Fighter jets flew directly at Drazen ships, firing their missiles at the last moment before impact. The missiles did nothing. The impact of the jets themselves did almost nothing. But the shields had to absorb each hit. The sensors had to track each attacker. The weapons had to fire at each target. 18 Drazen ships faced the entire industrial output of a planet that had been preparing for war since the invention of fire dot by the 6th hour. The cruiser Thaxorn had attached his command post to was burning, not from any single attack, but from 1,000 small wounds. Hackers had infiltrated its computer systems using methods that Drazen had never imagined, because no rational species would devote so many resources to digital warfare. The hackers could not control the ship, but they could create confusion. Alarms rang constantly. Systems reported damage that did not exist. The crew was exhausted from responding to false alerts. General, his second-in-command, reported, "The Hammer of Draz has lost shield generators on 3 decks. The Righteous Fury is venting atmosphere. The Claw of Empire has been boarded." Boarded? Thaxorn could not believe what he was hearing. How? A group of humans used experimental rocket suits to reach the hull. They cut through an airlock and entered with explosive devices. Our soldiers killed most of them, but 3 reached the engine room and detonated themselves. Thaxorn stared at the tactical display. The humans were dying by the thousands. Their technology was hopelessly outmatched. Any reasonable species would have surrendered hours ago, but they kept coming. Wave after wave, attack after attack, death after death. They were not fighting to win. They were fighting because fighting was what they did. They treated death as an acceptable cost. They treated sacrifice as a normal part of existence. "I understand now," Thaxorn said quietly. "Sir?" "The warning. Why the precursors feared them." Thaxorn watched another human jet crash into his ship's shields, the pilot making no attempt to eject. "We thought they were weak because they fight among themselves. But they fight among themselves because they are always at war. It is their natural state. Conflict is not something they avoid. It is something they have spent their entire existence perfecting." Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered. In the distance, Thaxorn could see one of his cruisers listing badly, its engines damaged by a coordinated attack from 3 different directions. "We came here expecting to conquer a primitive species," he continued. "Instead, we have awakened a predator, a species that evolved through constant warfare, that survived by being more aggressive and more stubborn than everything else on their planet. They are not afraid to die because death has always been part of their existence. They are not afraid to sacrifice because sacrifice is how they define heroism." He turned to his second-in-command. "Signal the fleet." "We are withdrawing, sir." The Emperor ordered us to conquer this world. The Emperor did not understand what he was ordering. Thaxorn looked at the blue planet that had cost him so much. "We cannot conquer them. Not with 18 ships. Not with 1,800. They will fight until the last human is dead, and even then, I suspect their ghosts would find a way to haunt us." The Drazen fleet began to pull back, their engines struggling against the damage they had sustained. As they retreated toward the hyperspace jump point, Jake Morrison and Amy Lawson detached from the cruiser they had been sabotaging and watched them go. "We did it," Amy whispered. "We actually did it." "No," Jake said, his eyes fixed on Earth in the distance. "Everyone did it. Every single person down there who threw something at those ships, who flew into certain death, who refused to give up. We all did it together." Below them, the planet was scarred but not conquered. Cities were damaged but not destroyed. Billions of people were looking up at the sky, watching the alien ships disappear, knowing that they had faced extinction and survived. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they were human, and humans do not surrender. The surviving Drazen ships limped back to their homeworld, their hulls scarred and their crews traumatized. Of the 18 vessels that had departed with such confidence, only 12 returned. 6 had been destroyed or abandoned in the battle, casualties of a war that was supposed to be a simple conquest. General Thaxorn stood before Emperor Drazku's throne for the last time. The throne room that had once felt like the center of power now felt like a tomb. Guards lined the walls, their weapons drawn. The generals and advisors who had laughed at the council's warning were silent now, their eyes fixed on the floor. "You failed," Tresker said, his voice cold as the void between stars. "You promised me victory in hours. Instead, you lost a third of your fleet to primitives." "My lord, I underestimated the enemy," Thaxorn replied. He did not beg. He did not make excuses. He was Drazen, and Drazen died with honor. The Council's warning was correct. Humans are not like other species. They cannot be conquered through superior firepower. They fight beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond any calculation of survival. Then how do you propose we defeat them? We do not. We cannot. Not unless we are willing to destroy the entire planet and everything on it. And even then, I am not certain that would be enough. Tresker rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow over Thaxorn. "You are telling me that the Drazen Imperium, which has never lost a war, cannot defeat a species that still burns fossil fuels?" "I am telling you the truth, my lord. As I always have." The Emperor's blade moved so fast that Thaxorn did not even see it. One moment he was standing. The next he was falling, his life ending on the same throne room floor where he had promised victory. But killing the general did not change reality. The humans had won, and the entire galaxy knew it. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Vex then addressed a gathering larger than any in living memory. Representatives from every member species had come, along with observers from dozens of non-member civilizations. All of them wanted to understand what had happened. All of them wanted to know what it meant. 3 weeks ago, the Drazen Imperium ignored our warning and attacked Earth. Vexton began. They sent 18 warships against a species with no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, and no plasma weapons. They expected an easy victory. They achieved something else entirely. The display above him showed footage from the battle, captured by Drazen sensors and later recovered from abandoned ships. The Council watched in silence as waves of human aircraft crashed into alien vessels. They saw submarines launching missiles that could not penetrate shields, but that kept coming anyway. They saw pilots ejecting into space with explosive devices strapped to their bodies, determined to cause damage even in death. The precursors understood something about humanity that the Drazen did not. Vexton continued. Humans are not dangerous because of their technology. Technology can be matched. Technology can be overcome. Humans are dangerous because of their nature. He paused, letting his words sink in. They are predators who became social. They evolved not by avoiding conflict, but by surviving it. Every threat they faced made them stronger, more adaptable, more determined. They developed intelligence not to live in peace, but to wage war more effectively. They invented agriculture to support larger armies. They invented writing to record battle strategies. They split the atom to build weapons of unimaginable destruction. And then they lived for decades under the threat of those weapons, accepting that extinction could come at any moment. This is the species the precursors warned us about. A species that has spent its entire existence fighting, not because they enjoy it, but because that is what survival required. When we attack them, we do not break their spirit. We unite them. We give them a common enemy. And there is nothing in the universe more dangerous than a united humanity with something to fight against. The hall remained silent. Some delegates looked frightened. Others looked fascinated. A few, particularly those from warrior cultures, looked almost respectful. The warning was not enough, Vexton said finally. Humanity is no longer contained. They have captured Drazen technology. Their scientists are already studying it, reverse engineering it, improving upon it. Within a generation, perhaps less, they will have faster-than-light travel. They will spread beyond their solar system. They will become a galactic civilization. What do? An ambassador called out. We pray that when they reach the stars, they come in peace. Because if they come in war, nothing we have will stop them. On Earth, the aftermath of first contact transformed human civilization. The nations that had united against the alien threat found it difficult to return to their old rivalries. How could you hate your neighbor when you had fought alongside them against extinction? How could you wage war over territory when you had seen how small your planet was compared to the universe? A global defense force was established, combining the militaries of every nation into a single organization dedicated to protecting Earth. Scientists from around the world worked together on captured Drazen technology, sharing discoveries that would have been classified secrets just months before. Dr. Nathan Price was a physicist working on experimental propulsion at a laboratory in California. Before the invasion, his research had been theoretical, decades away from practical application. Now, with access to Drazen engine components, he made breakthroughs in weeks that would have taken centuries. We can do it, he told the assembled leaders at a conference in Geneva. Faster than light travel. Within 5 years, maybe less. The Drazen technology gave us the final pieces we needed. We can reach the stars. 5 years later, the carrier Endurance launched from Earth orbit, the first human vessel capable of interstellar travel. It was enormous, built with a combination of human engineering and adapted alien technology. Its crew numbered 3,000, drawn from every nation on Earth. Admiral Ben Carter stood on the bridge as the ship prepared for its first hyperspace jump. He was a veteran of the invasion, one of the pilots who had flown against the Drazen fleet and somehow survived. Now he commanded humanity's first expedition beyond the solar system. Admiral, Lieutenant Kate Morgan reported from the communications station. We are receiving transmissions from multiple sources. Alien civilizations. Some are welcoming. Some are warning us to stay away. Some are threatening immediate attack if we approach their territory. Carter smiled. It was the same smile Jake Morrison had worn during the battle, the smile of someone who had faced impossible odds and refused to back down. Good, he said. At least they are paying attention. He looked out at the stars, at the infinite expanse that humanity was about to enter. For thousands of years, his species had fought among themselves, never knowing that something greater awaited. Now they knew. Now they were ready. All hands, Carter announced over the ship-wide channel. Prepare for hyperspace jump. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity can do. The Endurance's engines hummed with power. Reality bent around the ship. And then they were gone, racing toward the unknown at speeds that would have seemed like magic just the years before. In the archives of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Vex then recorded a new entry. The old warning, he noted, was no longer sufficient. Humanity was not a threat to be contained. They were a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never be the same. He closed his record with a single observation. The precursors were wise to fear humanity. But perhaps they were also wise to leave. Because now that the humans have reached the stars, nothing will ever hold them back again. And somewhere in the void between worlds, aboard a ship called Endurance, 3,000 humans looked out at the galaxy and smiled. They had been fighting for survival since the dawn of their species. The universe was simply the next battlefield. And humanity was ready.